Have you ever been ghosted after getting close? Have you ever felt someone pull away just when things were starting to feel real? Chances are you were dealing with someone who has avoidant attachment. But here's the secret most people don't know. Avoidants aren't cold, heartless, or unbothered. In fact, they often say some of the deepest, most revealing truths, just not to you. Instead, they confess their real fears, feelings, and contradictions to their best friends behind closed doors. In this video, we're pulling back the curtain on 5 vulnerable confessions avoidants make when you're not around. These aren't just surface-level excuses. They're raw glimpses into the emotional battlefield going on inside them. If you've ever been confused, hurt, or left wondering what went wrong, this might finally give you the answers you've been craving. I actually think about them a lot. I just can't handle the pressure of closeness. This is the kind of truth avoidants often whisper to their closest friends, but would never dare say to the person they're dating. It sounds contradictory on the surface, doesn't it? But for someone with avoidant tendencies, it makes perfect emotional sense. Deep down, they care. Deep down, they think about you, your smile, the time you spent together, the way you made them feel. It doesn't just vanish when they pull away. In fact, the distance often intensifies their thoughts because they're now preoccupied by the emotional storm they're trying to avoid. What they won't tell you is that they remember the tiny details, the way you looked at them during a quiet moment, the tone of your voice when you were vulnerable, the laugh you let out when something truly made you feel safe. They carry those things inside. But when those moments start demanding emotional presence, when connection begins to deepen, something terrifying stirs within them. The fear of losing themselves. Closeness for an avoidant feels like a trap. Not because the other person is doing anything wrong, but because intimacy triggers old patterns. It calls out their deepest fears, fear of being engulfed, fear of losing control, fear of being emotionally exposed. So instead of leaning into it, they retreat. But while they may physically withdraw or become emotionally distant, their mind doesn't shut off. On the contrary, they think about you more than you know. They replay conversations. They analyze your reactions. They wonder if you noticed their silence and what you might be feeling. But all of this happens behind the curtain, never making its way to you. They put on a mask of indifference while internally they're battling their own confusion. The real reason they don't tell you this is because vulnerability feels unsafe to them. Admitting that they care, that they think about you, that your presence affects them deeply, that's a level of exposure they were never trained to handle. So instead, they tell a friend, someone they feel less emotionally accountable to, someone who won't demand emotional availability in return. They might joke about it, saying, "Yeah, I think about them way more than I should," as if it's a casual thing. But that joke is laced with truth. They're haunted by the fact that they miss you, that they care, and that they can't make it work the way they want to. The most painful part is this: you may be interpreting their silence as disinterest, as if you never meant anything at all. Meanwhile, they're sitting with their friend, admitting how often you cross their mind, but not taking a single step to tell you. That emotional divide doesn't mean you failed to matter. It means their fear overpowers their desire to connect. And the saddest part is you may never know unless they finally decide to grow past that fear. Until then, their heart speaks in private while you're left in the silence. I panic when they get too close because I'm scared I'll lose myself. This confession, often revealed only in quiet conversations with trusted friends, holds a powerful key to understanding avoidant behavior. It's not that they don't want love. It's not that they don't crave connection. It's that intimacy, for them, is wired with danger. Getting close feels like entering a space where they no longer have control, where their identity could be consumed or lost entirely in the emotional needs of another person. To you, closeness may feel like safety. To them, it feels like a storm coming to wash away the parts of themselves they've spent years trying to protect. When someone starts getting too emotionally intimate, when they begin asking for vulnerability, openness, shared decisions, or emotional presence, an avoidant often experiences a deep, primal fear. It's not always conscious, but it's powerful. Suddenly, that person feels less like a romantic partner and more like a threat to their inner stability. This fear is usually rooted in early experiences, where closeness may have meant enmeshment, judgment, or emotional suffocation. As a result, they learn to equate emotional distance with safety. So when someone genuinely starts to care and tries to get closer, their mind doesn't interpret that as love. It interprets it as a loss of boundaries. They don't panic because of you. They panic because of what closeness triggers in them. Their identity feels under attack. They may feel like they're being asked to give up too much, too quickly. So they protect themselves in the only way they know how, by retreating, shutting down, or pushing you away. To you, it may look like sudden coldness. It may look like mood swings, detachment, or indifference. But inside, there's chaos. They're not calm. They're panicking. They're wrestling with a conflict between wanting to stay and feeling the urgent need to run. The more they feel themselves growing emotionally dependent or vulnerable, the more they fear that they're losing the sense of who they are. So they do things to create distance. Maybe they pick a fight over something small. Maybe they stop replying to your text as quickly. Maybe they cancel plans last minute or give off an energy that makes you feel unwanted. But all of these actions are not because they want you gone. They're because they want their emotional walls back up before it's too late. And this is what they tell their best friend when no one else is listening. They might say, "It's just too much," or "I don't know who I am in this relationship anymore," or even, "I feel like I'm disappearing." What they mean is closeness is overwhelming. They're scared that love will cost them their freedom, their identity, or even their sanity. And until they learn that true love doesn't erase who they are, it amplifies it, they'll keep running from the very thing they long for the most. I test their loyalty without even realizing it. This is one of the most quietly damaging patterns that avoidants often confess to their best friends, but never to the person they're dating. On the surface, it might seem like they're just being distant, erratic, or unpredictable. But deep down, what's really happening is a subconscious test of your commitment. They want to know, will you stay if I pull away? Will you chase me when I create distance? Will you prove that your love isn't conditional? These aren't games in the usual sense. They're coping mechanisms born from fear. Avoidants often carry a belief that people will eventually leave, get tired, or reject them once they get too close. So instead of waiting for that heartbreak to happen, they try to provoke it first, just to see if you'll pass their unspoken test. This emotional testing shows up in subtle, almost invisible ways. One day they're warm, affectionate, available. The next, they're cold, withdrawn, or even dismissive. You start to feel like you're walking on eggshells, unsure what version of them you're going to get. But to their best friend, they may say something like, "I just want to see if they really care," or "I want to know if they'll leave like everyone else." It's not that they enjoy making you suffer. On the contrary, they usually feel guilt after doing it, but that they're driven by a powerful need for reassurance. The problem is they don't know how to ask for that reassurance in a healthy way. Because expressing vulnerability feels dangerous to them, they resort to pushing people to the edge. If you stay through the hot and cold behavior, they take it as a sign that your love is real. But if you start to withdraw, protect your own peace, or stop chasing, they raid that as confirmation of their worst fear, that people always leave. And this twisted cycle keeps repeating. They end up creating the very distance they're afraid of just to protect themselves from the potential of being hurt. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and yet they struggle to break free from it. To their friends, they might open up about this cycle. They might even admit they don't know why they do it. There's often shame hidden beneath their words. They realize that their behavior pushes away good people, but the fear is louder than the logic. They want loyalty, but they test it in destructive ways. They crave stability, but they create emotional turbulence to see if the other person will endure it. And all of this remains hidden from you, the one being tested. You're left feeling like you're not enough, like you're doing something wrong, when in reality, you're being dragged into an emotional defense system that was built long before you ever arrived. Understanding this doesn't make the pain go away, but it can offer clarity. Their silence doesn't mean they don't care. Their emotional distance isn't always about you. Sometimes it's a test they didn't even know they were giving, born from a fear they still don't know how to heal. I wish I could be more open, but I don't know how to communicate feelings. This quiet confession is something avoidants rarely say to the person they're dating, but they often admit it to a close friend who knows their emotional limitations. Avoidants aren't emotionless, they feel deeply. But when it comes time to express those feelings, they freeze. It's not because they don't care, it's because articulating their emotions feels foreign, risky, and unsafe. From the outside, they might seem distant, uncaring, or even emotionally cold. But inside, they're filled with thoughts and emotions they have no idea how to put into words. This emotional shutdown isn't a choice. It's a habit built over years of suppressing vulnerability. When someone with an avoidant attachment style feels something intense, whether it's affection, jealousy, hurt, or even love, they often don't have the internal wiring to name those emotions, let alone express them constructively. Instead, they go silent, they shut down, they pretend everything's fine, or worse, they act out in frustration because they're overwhelmed and don't know how to explain why. With a best friend, especially one who's known them long enough to see through their defenses, they might admit, I wanted to say something, but I didn't know how, or I felt like I'd mess it up if I opened up. These aren't excuses. They're emotional truths from someone who doesn't feel safe enough to be emotionally naked in a romantic relationship. The reason why this is so frustrating for their partners is because the avoidant often comes off as emotionally unavailable. You ask how they feel and they shrug. You want reassurance and they give silence. You reach out with love and they give you distance. But what they're not telling you is that they often rehearse what they want to say in their heads, but never speak the words out loud. They're terrified of being misunderstood, of being judged, or of saying something that makes them look weak. So they suppress it, thinking it's safer to say nothing than to risk emotional exposure. To their best friend, they'll share the things they wish they could tell you. They'll talk about how they wanted to comfort you when you were upset, or how they felt connected in that one quiet moment, but couldn't bring themselves to say it. They're not proud of this. In fact, it often makes them feel broken or incapable of normal connection. But it's all they know. And until they learn emotional language, until they feel safe enough to trust that vulnerability won't be punished, they will continue hiding behind a wall of silence. So when they say, I don't know how to communicate feelings, believe them. It's not always a lack of love, it's a lack of skill and safety. They weren't taught how to express what's going on inside them. And that silence you feel isn't the absence of emotion, it's the presence of fear. A fear that if they open up, they'll be seen, and being seen might hurt more than being alone. I fear they'll stop loving me once they truly know me. This confession is one of the most painful truths avoidants hide from the people they care about most. To the outside world, they may appear confident, independent, even emotionally distant, but behind that exterior is a deep, rooted insecurity, the belief that if someone really gets to know who they are, flaws, fears, wounds and all, they'll be rejected, abandoned, or judged. So they hide behind silence, sarcasm, business, or emotional distance. Not because they don't want to be known, but because they're terrified that true intimacy will expose them as unlovable. This fear often stems from early emotional experiences where love may have been conditional. Maybe they were only praised when they succeeded, only valued when they performed, or only accepted when they suppressed their true feelings. Over time, they internalized a belief that their authentic self wasn't enough. So, as adults, when someone begins to care about them, they struggle to believe that love could be based on who they really are rather than what they pretend to be. To their best friend, they may confess, "I'm scared they'll leave if they see the real me," or "I don't think I'm someone worth loving once the mask comes off." These words never reach you, the person offering love, because sharing that kind of vulnerability feels far too risky. This is why avoidants often keep relationships at a surface level. They may share just enough to keep things functional, but never enough to make the connection feel emotionally intimate. They'll avoid deep conversations, deflect compliments, or keep certain parts of their past hidden. And if you start to get too close, if you start asking more questions, craving more honesty, or seeking a deeper emotional bond, they may pull away or even sabotage the connection. It's not because you're doing anything wrong. It's because they believe that the closer you get, the more likely you are to see something that makes you stop loving them. In their friendships, avoidants may feel safer expressing this fear because there's less pressure. A best friend isn't asking for romantic intimacy or emotional dependence. They're simply listening, holding space without demanding closeness. That allows the avoidant to be honest about their fears without feeling threatened. They might talk about how exhausting it is to keep pretending, how they wish they could be more open, or how they fear being too much for someone to handle. But in romantic relationships, that level of transparency feels impossible. What hurts the most is that the person dating them, you, often senses that something is being held back. You feel the emotional distance. You feel the hesitation. You wonder why they won't let you in. And the answer, tragically, is that they think your love is conditional. They believe that if you saw the full picture, the wounds, the weaknesses, the raw truth, you'd walk away. So they protect themselves by hiding, and in doing so, they miss the chance to experience the kind of love that could prove them wrong. I don't want to hurt them, but I feel like I always do. This is the quiet guilt avoidants carry inside, but rarely reveal to the person they're hurting. It's something they only admit in vulnerable moments to their closest friends, the ones who've seen them cycle through relationships, self-sabotage, and emotional retreat. Despite their cold exterior, avoidants often have a heavy heart. They're not oblivious to the pain they cause. In fact, they often feel it just as deeply, if not more, because they're stuck in a pattern they don't know how to break. They don't want to hurt the person they care about, but their instincts, fears, and defense mechanisms often push them to do exactly that. And afterward, they're left feeling ashamed, guilty, and emotionally conflicted. To you, their partner, it might look like indifference when they go silent or withdraw. It might feel like rejection when they minimize your feelings or avoid emotional conversations. But behind the scenes, they're often struggling with a wave of remorse they don't know how to express. They wonder if they've ruined something good again. They question why they always push away people who care about them. They replay their actions in their mind, realizing too late how cold or distant they seemed. And yet, instead of apologizing or explaining themselves, they retreat further, because facing the pain they've caused makes them feel even more unworthy of love. To their best friends, avoidants will open up in ways they can't with their partners. They'll say things like, "I don't know why I keep doing this," or "They're such a good person." "I just don't know how to show up right." There's frustration in their voice. Sadness too. They're not trying to manipulate or play games. They're stuck in a cycle where protecting themselves emotionally ends up damaging the very connection they secretly long for. It's a painful paradox. The more they care, the more afraid they become, and the more they hurt the person they're afraid of losing. This guilt doesn't always motivate change, at least not right away, because it's tangled in fear. They worry that if they try to fix things, they'll mess it up even more. They fear vulnerability, so instead of reaching out with an honest apology or a heartfelt explanation, they choose silence, or distance, or distraction. And the partner is left confused and heartbroken, interpreting the lack of response as a lack of care, when in reality, the avoidant is overwhelmed by how much they care and how incapable they feel of expressing it safely. At their core, avoidants don't want to hurt anyone, but they do, repeatedly. Not out of cruelty, but out of fear, habit, and emotional immaturity. And while their guilt is real, it doesn't always translate into accountability or change. That's why relationships with avoidance can feel like emotional whiplash. Moments of closeness followed by unexpected withdrawal, kindness shadowed by coldness, connection replaced with distance. It's a heartbreaking cycle, especially because the avoidant knows deep down they're the one who keeps building the wall, and they hate themselves for it, even if they never say it to you.